But first, we're going to do a video game. Well, Sage is going to do a video game that review for us today, and that is going to be for Alan Wake 2, a game that he was very much highly anticipating. Sage, give us the breakdown on Alan Wake 2.
Yeah. So if you're unfamiliar with Alan Wake 2 or the Alan Wake 1, it's about a writer who has a run-in with a eldritch presence monstrosity that is capable of bringing artistic creations into the real world and altering reality through them. So it's very dreamy, very trippy. There's a lot of kind of esoteric elements at play. It can take a little deconstructing to understand everything going on. David Lynch films are a big influence on these. So it's kind of the A24 horror movie of video games is, I think, a good way to describe it.
Okay. All right. And I know that this game, how long was this game like in production for?
So they've been actively working on it for only about 4 years, which is a pretty normal development time. But the first game came out back in 2010, and they kept trying to get it made, and it just did not work out for up until 2020 when they actually got this into production. Microsoft still had the publishing rights, so Remedy had to buy those back. And yeah, it was a very long process, lots of iterations. This is something that they had to sit on for a very long time before they were allowed to make it. But I think, honestly, I'm glad that it took so long, because this version of it, I think, I think it was worth waiting for.
Okay. And seeing you're playing the titular character there of Alan Wake, who is a cross between Bradley Cooper and Limitless, and John Wick, Keanu Reeves there. So tell us a little bit. Like you said, he's a writer, everything like that. Is there any more details about the character?
So there's two characters to really kind of be aware of going into this. You have Alan Wake from the first game. He's a writer. He kind of got wrapped up in this whole situation with this eldritch kind of nightmare dimension after having writer's block and going on kind of a bender. He's kind of not the most likable character at the start of the first game. He's got a good journey through it, and he does do the heroic self-sacrificing across that game. But in this, we pick up with him. He's very confused. This place that he's in messes with his memories. Its time is not totally linear. You really, I think, feel for this guy. He's in a rough place. He's struggling very clearly with existing in this place that's like a cross between like a David Lynch movie, like Eraserhead, and like Silent Hill almost, that he's trapped in. And then on the flip side, this is very much taking from like, your Resident Evil 1 or 2, where you've got kind of a split campaign and there's two characters. And your second one is an FBI agent, Saga Anderson, who she is kind of a whole newcomer to all of this. Part of that character's existence works as a really great entry point for new players if you are totally unfamiliar with things. She's, tough FBI agent coming to investigate a series of cult ritualistic killings in the small town from the original game. And as things start to turn supernatural and she starts to kind of learn the history of the town and the previous games, so do you as a player. So it kind of operates on this interesting place where like you can come into this fresh, but having played previous games does do a lot to give you context.
Okay. And with such a kind of long break between the games, does it kind of directly tie into the first game pretty well? Is like the continuity?
Oh yeah, it's a direct sequel for sure. Now, so Alan's half really is picking up almost kind of directly. Now, he's been trapped in this nightmare dimension for 13 years, but because of the Saga character, it allows it to be a direct sequel and also a new story that you could come into fresh, kind of all at the same time. It's actually very cleverly done.
Mm, okay. Gameplay wise, what's kind of going on there? How do you like that?
So that's a really interesting thing because the original game, I love that story. It's one of my favorite games. But I'll tell you right now, the original game had some very clunky gameplay that was not always necessarily fun. That's a game you played for the story. You put it on easy mode. It's a lot of somewhat repetitive combat encounters. The big thing was you shine the flashlight on these people possessed by darkness, you burn the darkness away, and then you can shoot them. And that element still makes it into this sequel. But there's a lot less enemy encounters, tougher enemies, less frequently, more atmospheric tension building in between. You get very heavy in the Silent Hill aspect there, but it's taking a lot from the Resident Evil remakes in terms of the camera angle being kind of right behind the shoulder. Whereas in the original game, it was more like Max Payne, where it's like the camera's kind of far out, and it's like a very large 3D or kind of third person viewpoint. Whereas here we pull things in, we're kind of right behind the shoulder, taking inspiration from your Resident Evil remakes, your Dead Space, all those kinds of more modern horror games, and it is much better for it. The gameplay in this game is leagues above the original. I think the gameplay actually rises to meet the story this time instead of the story being the thing that has to pull you along despite the gameplay.
Graphics wise, I know some people have talked about, now that I mean the PS5 has been out for what, 3 years now? 3, 4 years?
Yeah, 2020, I think. Yeah, is when it came out. So
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 about
we're right 3 years right now.
and we, are in the next generation of consoles. And then people have said just kind of recently with games like Spider-Man that it's really pushing the limits. It's like, oh yeah, this is what these new consoles were made for. Do you feel like with this game, graphic wise, do you feel like this is like, oh yeah, this is definitely next generation, looking game?
That This is the game I've felt that the most about. Like, to be honest, more so than even Spider-Man. And some of it is that because it's an overall smaller game, they're able to put more graphical fidelity into the visuals. But the big thing with this, so in the original game, very much part of the story that this kind of eldritch monstrosity, it brings fiction to life, right? Alters reality through the use of art, and that's a big part of the story, but it does not play into the gameplay. In this game, you have two mechanics when you're playing as Alan. You have a kind of like a magic lamp where you can pull light sources from one place and bring it to another. And every time you do that, you're shifting the reality around you, and it's seamless. It's instantaneous. And then the second one is that he's got this writer's room, which is like your kind of what replaces having a menu in this game. And you go into the character's head, and you've got a plot board, and you find, as you explore the game, you find settings and plot elements, and then you can kind of shift and combine them within the menu, and then it jumps to the game, and you see like overlaid images of him typing at his typewriter, and then the whole environment just changes in less than a second around you. It is honestly, I think, the most impressive next gen environment storytelling. The fact that you have such an effect on the environment as a gameplay mechanic, it's honestly the most creative thing I've seen in quite some time, and I think it's only possible with this generation of consoles.
Hmm. New characters. Any new characters here that you want?
Well, so Saga, like I'd mentioned before, she's kind of half the game, really. She's a brand new character. Great entry point, right? If you haven't played the last one, she makes for a very good way to come in and kind of learn with her about what's going on. Her partner, and she's FBI. Her partner that comes with her, Alex Casey. This one's very interesting because Alex Casey is the fictional character that Alan was famous for writing in the first. He's also Max Payne with his name changed just enough for legal reasons. Um, so you have these very interesting meta elements going on in the game, and some of that's through the use of these new characters. There's a lot of elements of control. that come in the form of new characters. There's elements from Quantum Break that come in as new characters. It's kind of a culmination of Remedy's whole history as a studio. I mean, as Alan, you're wandering the dark place, this nightmare reality, and Alex Casey walking around with the face of Max Payne and the voice of Max Payne is threatening his own creator as Alan is wondering about his own creator, who is Sam Lake, whose face is was used to create Max Payne and then Alex Casey. So there's weird levels of meta going on here, and there's a lot. There's quite a few new characters. You also have someone named Mr. Door, who seems to be this like reality shifting god that can just like walk through universes. Hosting a talk show. I sound like a crazy person probably describing any of the things going on here. But it is that Lynch dream logic that much of this game is operating on.
Mm, okay. Yeah, gorgeous looking game. I see a lot of really good gameplay stuff here. Like this is a scene that I just played in the trailer where he flashes the light, and then shoots his shotgun, and then something explodes. There, bomb kind
A
of
lot of
explodes.
environmental destruction too, like pieces of things kind of fly off if you hit like a sign or like something destructible, which just really impressive the way it kind of all feels lived in and kind of real.
Yeah. So I like that a lot. Yeah, that looks really good. And this was the big game that came out, after Spider-Man, getting rave reviews there. Do you agree with that? Is that kind of your assessment that is this a game of the year candidate?
Personally, it is my game. I mean, there's stuff that I haven't gotten around to play yet. Not many of the really big things. I'm like a quarter into Spider-Man, working on that still. But right now, it is the most original, creative. Obviously, it took the longest out of anything that's come out recently. It does whole gameplay mechanics and sequences that I've never seen in a game before. I mean, there's a use of live action footage where the game will seamlessly transition into lengthy cutscenes with just fully real actors and real environments, and back and there's almost like audiobook elements to it. At one point there's a level in this game, I shit you not, is a musical. There like there is so much going on here that like to me this almost transcends being a game at certain points, and it feels like this just kind of really wild multimedia storytelling effort that just feels kind of brand new, and like not only the most interesting game I've played this year, but I think the most interesting piece of media that I've consumed, period.
Mm, mm. So, what would be your rating for Alan Wake 2?
Well, for me, this is cinema. This is for me like peak video game storytelling. This is proof that as video games as a medium have progressed so much and become a genuine art form. There's been many times people will undersell it as a thing for kids, or this a very unserious thing that could just as a hobby. But I think and there's been games before this that have done it, but I think this is the most recent game to go, no, 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 no. There's real artistic integrity to be had here in this medium. And I think this is one of the strongest achievements of that idea that I think I've ever seen.
Mm, wow. And this is cinema is the highest rating that you can give something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you absolutely loved it. I'm probably gonna check.
Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. So this is cinema from Sage for Alan Wake